let's move to the Spurs Fulham one because this is an interesting game. Because again, I was mentioning it earlier. You don't like to bet in the Premier League, like because I generally looked at this fixture and I thought, oh, this is a Spurs 3-1. You know, Fulham seems to be just in this. I don't really know what to describe it with Fulham. They're in this weird funk that I don't really know. Like you've got Marco Silva's contract's up at the end of the year. He doesn't look like he wants to stay long term. And then, he wants to see what they're going to do and give him in January. And Fulham just seem to be just going through the motions of a Premier League season, not being spectacularly bad, but not being a world beater or, anything special. I just find them very, yeah, they're here, right? And I just thought Spurs, they need a win. Spurs need a win after a couple of defeats. And I thought this was just, a get right game. I thought, Fulham's a good team to get right on. Do you know what I mean? Because they don't look like they're highly motivated. And I was doing something else, and I came back and saw the scoreline. And you know me, because I'm not exactly a Spurs supporter in any way, shape, or form. And it gave me a good smile on Saturday. But I'm more interested in talking about Thomas Frank, right? Because let's be honest, right? This is the question I have. Has Thomas Frank already been found out? Is his Brentford style and approach too limited for this club? And because the fans expect a front foot football team. What's your thoughts?
I think there's 2 points to this. Has Thomas Frank been found out is one question. And then, is his style too different from, for example, Ange's style, right? I'll answer the style first. What I'll say is this. You know what you had in Ange, and I mean, he did win you a trophy. At the end of the day, he did bring you home a trophy, regardless of what it was. He won you a trophy. But at the same time, there is a downside to playing with that front foot, the type of front foot that Ange played, right? Because I think that was successful. They sustained way too many injuries due to his style of play, because you need a super fit team to be able to run like that, and you need depth. But at the same time, maybe Thomas Frank was able to overachieve with his playing style with Brentford based on the type of players he had. So Spurs may have better players on paper, but the profile of the players Thomas Frank had in Brentford suited his style better.
Yeah, and I think that see, here's the thing: is I think everybody knows how Thomas Frank's going to set up, and I think to a certain degree that the found out thing is people already know what it is with Thomas Frank, right?
Right.
I think he's implemented obviously a little bit of that the way he's played obviously at Brentford, that style and that approach, and I think what it is, well, you and me can talk about this because we talk about it with Toronto FC, right? Like when you turn up to a game at Toronto FC. We turn up not to lose, and they play a very conservative, boring football that is like watching paint dry.
Yeah.
And with Ange, I think what the Spurs fans were craving for years was some attack, some flair, some creativity to play the Chris Waddle way, the old school Spurs way. And I think they wanted that. And then you've got a pragmatic coach, though. But you hired a pragmatic coach because you finished 17th in the league.
Yeah.
And I think... Are Spurs fans right to be angry? Because they're clearly voicing it. Like you don't have to go very far on any social media platform. I happened to turn on TalkSport the other day. It just when I opened up my laptop, I opened it up, and last thing I was watching was TalkSport about something else. I think it was about Forest, and they had a Spurs fan on, and he's just ranting and raving about how the fact is it's so boring. It's not the same. They don't play on the front foot. The styles is, he's saying, well, with Spurs, we should be leading the charge, not sitting back and all this kind of stuff. And to a certain degree, I understand that. But this is the thing, and this is the point for me. I think, are the Spurs players struggling to adapt to his system and discipline over the freedom they had previously? And I think the answer is yes. I think they are struggling. I don't think that the players he has necessarily suits the way he wants to play. And I think they want to play with freedom. And I think we mentioned it a little bit last week, where you kind of see a little bit of a revolt against him. And I wonder, he came out tonight. I don't know if you saw it, and said, the ownership, has my back, right?
We all know what that usually means.
I know that's why I was like, oh, I think it's definitely something. It's definitely, I don't know what it is with them. Like, again, I just think that the players don't want. They played the gung ho style last year, and it's hard to then not be gung ho. And let's be honest, we've played in teams like that where we played gung ho, and you love it, right? But it's not sustainable, right?
No. Here's the downside to that. Like, we're not going to dwell on it too much, but if we look at, they're away tomorrow at Newcastle. So they haven't, like, their last result was November 8th, 2-2 draw against Man United. Right? And the last time they played Newcastle was in the FA Cup, or sorry, the EFL. And they lost 2-0. So, the odds are that they're going to lose tomorrow. Like, because Newcastle is one of the hardest places to go and get a point, and you're expecting them. And then I'm pretty sure after that, they go and play Brentford on Saturday. And it's almost like Brentford is going to be coming up, licking their chops like, oh yeah, we want this one. So if he can't beat if he can't go at home and beat Brentford on Saturday, because I think tomorrow's result won't matter. I think it'll be all come down to Saturday. If they cannot get a win at home against Brentford, that could be the writing on the wall for him. Right? They won't wait. They won't do an Ange rule. They'll give him the full season. They'll cut ties with him sooner rather than later.
Actually, you know what? Give me 1 second. I remember this. Somebody said to me the other day. Somebody sent this to me as a message. I'm just looking for it. It's something about Spurs. Since the start of 2025, they have the worst home record in any of the top 4 divisions, something like that. Which I never got to look it up the other day. I'll have to find it and I'll post it I'll post it on our Twitter. But essentially, their home form since in the Premier League has been atrocious, which they look like they don't like playing at Spurs right now. They look like playing away seems to be a little bit easier, so maybe they'll have some joy.
I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens tomorrow. But I think both of us would be shocked if they got a result on the road.
Newcastle, but again, Newcastle's another team that's Jekyll and Hyde. You just don't know which Newcastle team's going to turn up. You get one that pumps Everton, and you'll get one that'll lose to Burnley. Like, it's just again wildly inconsistent this year too. I think Newcastle, Forest, Villa. I think they're don't get me wrong, Villa's going up the table, but they're all very Jekyll and Hyde this year, and I think Spurs aren't too much dissimilar to them either. So you never know which one you're going to get.
And I think we should, a quick point. Fulham, a well-deserved 2-1 win. They scored early. They got the 2 quick goals. Now, that's not always the best way to have your goals that early and then kind of have to, defend for a good chunk of the game. But you know what? If it gets you the result you need, they're the team. They're the kind of team that's just wants to make sure they survive. They're not in that relegation battle. And I think that's pretty much where you'll see Fulham this year will be, in that 15 to 10 spot. Right. And I think that is their goal.
Yep. And I think that clearly says that I think Marco Silva's going to leave, because I don't see him
they're not spending.
It's clearly not spending money, and I think that's what and Fulham want 10 million for him. I think if you remember when Forest were looking at him, they asked for 10 million to get him out of his contract now, and he said no. So we'll see how that goes. But I think at the end of the day, I think he wants to move forward, and I don't think where he is right now is moving forward. And he was very vocal at the end of the last season, and he's done a solid job with Fulham on a budget. But I think there's a couple of managers that are looking to move up the table.
Yeah, of course. Every manager has ambition to win things, right? It's you not just want to coach in the Premier League, you want to win. So you can't blame him after given what he's given to that club for the past few years.
Absolutely.